Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Electric Supply and Equipment seminar today on View Designer. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, we are going to be going through the panel view 5510 versus the 5310 hardware, the out-of-box hardware setup, View Designer software features and requirements, new project creation and configuration, screen creation and navigation between graphics, basic animation of some common graphic elements, emulating the panel view 5000 hardware, downloading to a terminal and uploading from a terminal, as well as any additional support that's being offered at this point. So to start, we're going to work with the panel view 5510 and 5310 hardware. So the panel view 5000 came out to allow a single source platform using Studio 5000 for both the HMI as well as the Logix controller. With that, you must use a Logix controller, Compact Logix, Control Logix, in conjunction with the PanelView 5000 hardware. But the new hardware is a lot more intuitive, sleek, and enhanced in comparison to our PanelView Plus partner. I'm going to highlight just a few major differences between the two hardwares, such as the 5310 only has touch capability, as well as only has a single Ethernet port, whereas the 5510 has touch and a built-in navigation button and a keypad option if you ever wanted to do that. Plus, it also has the DLR port, so dual Ethernet port with the same IP address. There are a couple other limitations based on the hardware. Some of them are pertaining to the application. So the 5310 can only communicate with one controller up to 100 screens and 4,000 alarms, whereas the 5510 can communicate up to 4 controllers, still that 100 screen limit for the time being, and 4,000 alarms per controller. So a little bit different. Also, you can see on the bottom the compatibility of the Control Logix and Compact Logix controllers. You must be using the newer version of software in order to be compatible with the new screens. So when you order and get a new panel view, there's a couple of things you're going to need to set up immediately. So out of the box, you need to power up your device. If you power up the device for the first time and you see the error screen shown in the bottom left corner, typically that is going to be an issue with your 24-volt DC power supply or the connection. So check your connectors on that. If you refer to the manual, it will say it has a hardware error, but we have found most of the time that it will be just simply an issue with your power supply. Once the actual screen comes up, it will move to a graphic that looks just like the one in the bottom right corner. You can use the network screen in order to change the IP address, and then you will also want to confirm the firmware that is on the physical device. If you need to upgrade the firmware, you can use Control Flash Plus or the traditional Control Flash. You confirm the firmware by selecting the HMI device screen, which is the third one on the left. So we're going to talk about Studio 5000 View Designer software. We're just going to highlight some of the features and the requirements. So some of the key features that are built into View Designer is a PDF document viewer. You do not need to use an ActiveX or anything else. That is a built-in object in which we will go over at another point. The software also has a very, very good terminal emulator. It is similar to running a machine edition station, but is more compact and a lot simpler. The panel views also run an operating system that is Linux-based, so you don't have to worry about updates or IT people coming back later on and having an issue with the operating system running on some of these panel views. And one other key feature that they have changed is they stored an entire project in one single file, a .vpd, very similar to how a controller works. And if you're used to PanelView Plus, then you are used to having a full folder structure in which you can only transfer the runtime and certain things like that. So they have tried to make this a lot easier on this new platform. Some requirements are, though, that you must match the panel view firmware. So the software and the firmware must be the same. So this is also the same thing as with the PLC, but you can install multiple versions on a single computer. Again, very similar to the Logix software, in which we show on the bottom right corner there. Okay, so to start for today, we're going to move into the virtual machine and we are going to make a brand new project and we're going to configure the project out the gate. So we're going to open Studio 5000. We're going to make a new project. There are 3 primary steps to creating a new project. First, you need to make sure that you are selecting a view project. As you can see, you can move to Logix or FactoryTalk View Designer, or FactoryTalk View for Machine Edition or Site Edition, but we are going to be using View Designer. The next is you need to select the proper hardware that you are using. Today, I'm going to be connecting to a 9-inch 5510 panel view. And then the last thing you do on this screen or as a requirement is enter in the version. So as you can see, I have version 6 and version 5 on my computer. You can go back to version 4, version 3. You just have to install it the same you would Logix 5000. So we're going to stick with version 6 and we're just going to name our project Webinar. You can change the location. I've changed mine to move it to the desktop. By default, it goes into the public folder, but you can change that at any point. Just know where you put it so that you can find the file later. We're going to click Finish. This takes just a few seconds to get set up, but once the project finishes creating here, it will then open up and it will default to the configuration screen in which you need to configure the PLC path and the PLC file. So the PLC file is required because that is how the software sets up your tag database. As you can see, it pops up here, and by default, it comes to references, which is your PLC. So today, I'm only communicating with one, but as you can see here, since I am using a 5510, you can see maximum supported of 4. I am just going to simply name my PLC. Again, here you need to specify which project file. This is so that it can create a tag database. I'm going to browse to my desktop and I am using my compact L18 demo. We're going to open. The next thing you need to configure is the HMI controller path. You can type in the address if you would like, and you could specify a slot, or you can hit the ellipses. That will automatically bring up your RS-Who, and I am going to use my compact demo, and here's my controller. Once you select it, and it's a good path, your OK button will work. And the last thing we want to do, because we were going to run the emulator today, is also create this. So the emulator will store your last ones, or you can again browse. But because I already know where it is, I'm going to go ahead and select that. The next thing you need to do is also set up the path of the device itself. So again, it will save it as it does previously, or you can hit browse, which I will do just to show you. Then you can open up the driver in which you're going to use to communicate. And we are waiting for it to pull in here. We're going to click OK. So now it has my device. So your first tab is your application, and you entered in that. By default, we had to set up our controller configuration. You have your log on for security. We're not going to go over that today, but if you do have questions, feel free to reach out to us. Then you have your language and just general usage of your controller to let you know. We're going to click Apply and OK. At that point, we have successfully created the project and configured the project so that it can communicate with the controller, as well as communicate with the physical hardware we're going to put it on at some point today. Next, we're going to move into creating a new screen. and the default navigation. So I want to just highlight, as we're going through, things have changed in comparison to FactoryTalk View Machine Edition. FactoryTalk used to have several toolbars across the top. All the toolbars are now located in just the toolbox. So you have your common controls, which is here, and then the same thing as having your symbol factory where you had your buttons. You can select your buttons, general equipment where you'll have VATs, bar graphs, and all sorts of other things, signs and symbols, things along that nature. Everything that you're going to need to populate your project will be located here in your toolbox. One other major thing I want to point out is the property pane. When you're using Machine Edition, typically you can double click and open the object and it has its own configuration window. The way the View Designer works is all the properties and all your configuration can be done inside the property panel. The property panel shows you the properties of each object. You can add animations and change the event and how that feature or function works of the device. The next thing we're going to talk about real quick is the default navigation. So as you can see, by default, there is this banner on the top. If you want to create your own navigation, you can click on the main screen itself and you can uncheck the Show Default Banner. This will allow you to make your own navigation or keep the built-in navigation. The main things I want to point out is this button here is your navigation menu button. By default, again, it's stored on there, but you can pull it out if you choose to. The banner is located inside your predefined screens as the banner. If you needed or wanted to edit it at any point, you can. The other thing is this default button opens this menu listed here. So if we are going to set everything up, but I'm not setting up alarms today, you can easily delete these objects. The other thing is we want to make some new screens, right? So I'm going to make a new screen and I'm going to call it main. And then later on, we're also going to make another screen so that we can do our PDF viewer. As you can see, they are not currently located in our navigation menu. If you would like to do it, all you do is drag and drop it and you can change the name. This is what you will see when you hit your navigation button later on. By default, I had my screen 1 being my home, signified by this little thing. I want to change my home to now be the main. What you would do is you right click on it, click set as main. Now, when you load this program into the panel view or into the emulator, it will now use this as the first screen that pops up. So you want to always know and assign the specific screen that you would like. Just because I'm going to go ahead and get rid of screen 1, which was the default screen created, but no big deal, right? Hopefully that covers the general navigation and how to create screens out the gate. The next section we're going to cover is a little bit more detailed, and we're actually going to start adding objects and animating them. So we're going to start by going to my main screen. So double click. I'm going to leave my default banner for now, but we're going to start adding objects. So the first object I want to add is actually a pre-built illuminated push button. So I'm going to take this button, drag and drop it over here. I'm going to resize it because I don't want it to be too big. But again, you can do this. And if you notice that it has the green little lines, that's very similar if you ever use Microsoft Visio and things like that. This software acts very similar to that. But one of the things I want to point out is as I selected the object, you can see over here on the right-hand side all the properties we get. So you can change the position and the size, security if you want to add it, you change the colors, and again, this is an illuminated push button. So by default, it already has an animation built into it to turn a light on. Therefore, you don't have to go into the animations and change it and add your own. But you can if you choose to. Again, if you wanted to change the color, you select this here, and you can change it if you want it to be orange or any other thing, and you'll see it. Again, by default, it will start out red, but you can change it. And then we want ours to change color or illuminate only on certain conditions, right? So what you can do is you add a binding. A binding is the ability to add a tag to that property. You can add the tag by typing it if you know it, selecting the tag, or making it an expression. So I just want to assign it to a tag. Remember how I said you had to have a PLC program in the configuration. Once you add the PLC program, it allows you to navigate through and find the tags that you're going to be looking for. So I want my light on. So this is going to be a red push button. So I want it to be a stop push button. I want the stop button to illuminate if my command to start the motor is on. So when the motor is running, I want the red illumination to turn on to indicate I can stop the device if I would like. Initially, I don't want that to be on, and we're just going to leave it as this. The next thing we got to do, Ro, is we want to make this button do something, which is adding an event. So you can go to the Events tab, or you can right-click on the device, go to Button Behavior, and you have several different features. Again, every object can be and will replace all sorts of different objects that used to exist using FactoryTalk View Machine Edition. So you can set a tag to 1, set a tag to 0. You can turn it on press and release, which would be the same as a momentary push button. And you could toggle a push button, or the tag, I should say. The set to 1 or 0 and the toggle are very similar, except for if you use the toggle, it automatically moves from 1 to 0 and 1 to 0 without needing a secondary event or secondary button. If you wanted to have 2 separate buttons controlling on and off functionality, you'd want to do a specific set. For me, I'm just going to go ahead and toggle the button. Now again, we're looking for the other things you can configure here. So if we had the 5510, which we do, you get the ability to assign it to a keypad here if you want, or leave it as touch only. By default, it will always be touch only. If you are using a 5310, this is not an option for you, and it will always be touch only. We're also going to assign a tag, and this one is going to be our motor stop request push button. Very quickly, I'm going to make another push button, which is going to be our start push button. As you can see, as I drag it around, it will do automatic alignment for us. But if you highlight multiple objects, you can see that a toolbar will show up where you can group the objects, order the objects, and align them. When you copy and paste, it will copy all the tags and all the functions that you've already created. But this one I want to be a run or start push button. So I want the light to turn on based on this, except for this needs to be when this tag is not equal. And as you can see, as I'm typing in the expression, if the expression does not work, you will get a red border around your entire expression. Once you complete the expression and it works or validates, it will turn back to a grayscale. If at any point in time you need to help understand the different syntax and other things you can do, the way we suggest do it is you can hit your help here, or you can press the F1 key. It will bring up your expression editor. From here, you can type in expression examples to enter. And our third option here is expression examples. This will run through and tell you how to build expressions. So I just did a not equal to expression. Let's see where that's listed, which is a relational operator. So not equal to, and it shows you how you would build that tag. It takes a little bit to get used to, but I just wanted to show where you can go if you wanted to add an expression. We're going to click OK. And then let's not forget that we have this being a toggle button, but we want to change this from the start or the stop push button to the start push button. Okay. Now we've created our 2 illuminated push buttons. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bar graph. So we're going to go to Graph, Bar Graph. Our bar graph is going to simulate some sort of tank or something filling some sort of level that we're going to use today. One thing I want to show you though is by default the bar graph is to the right. If you expand it, it still keeps the animation and everything pointed to the right. We don't necessarily want it to be real fat like that. We just want it to kind of be a generic, but we do want to turn it so that it fills going from top to bottom. How you would do that is you actually come in and change the property. Here you have an angle. So you can change this to any angle, but I want mine to fill starting from the bottom moving up, which would be 270 degrees. If I put 90, which most people would think, it turns it with the base being left up. So that's why I did 270, turning it. So now it turned the base and it went full 3/4 of a circle and now points out. The other thing we're going to want to do with this is we need to animate it, and we want to animate the value. So we are going to bind the value, and we're going to bind it to a tag. We're going to tie this particular one to my analog input, and my output is my real output of that. Okay, so that's how you would quickly animate and add a level or bar graph. The next thing we're going to add is a generic push button. So you grab your button and you add button. So you can change what your text is, and I'm going to change this to view. Oh, we're not typing. View PDF. What I want to do now is I can change what this button is going to do. So I'm going to do a key press. So when this button is pressed, I'm going to navigate. So you can add multiple different things here, right? But again, I'm just going to navigate. And then I'm going to navigate to a specific screen. You select, and you can navigate using the navigation menu, which is that predefined menu. You can navigate to screens that you created, or you can navigate to predefined screens, which is how you would navigate to your alarm summary and things like that if you wanted to have a alarm. But we want this one to navigate to PDF. I just really wanted to highlight you have that ability. Also, if you wanted, you can add an animation, but we're not going to worry about that just for our generic push button. I just wanted to highlight that the generic push button has the options of many, many buttons that used to have individual functions in comparison to Factory Talk Machine Edition. So the next thing we're going to work on that's a very common is a numerical input. So our numerical input works as both display because it has a value, as well as if it's selected, it will pop up a keypad to allow you to enter numeric. So for our value, I want to bind it, and I want to bind it to a tag. See, by default, it automatically keeps track of the last tag associated, but I want to assign this to a different analog input, and I'm going to use this as if it is my motor speed feedback. Again, I'm going to tie it to my analog input value that I want. Now, this will animate and show the value of that. When you select it, it will also overwrite this value, or attempt to, as I'll show you in a little bit. You can change the color and any other things in this if you would want to make it different. But for now, we're just going to leave it standard. The next and most common thing that we work with is probably going to be a multi-state indicator. I'm going to leave the text generic as text display to start, but this one we are going to animate a lot more because we want this to change and do all sorts of things. So I'm actually going to work with the animations on this one. Again, you can go through each property and animate it, but when you want to change multiple objects, I would suggest you using the animation. You have a color table, which I'm going to bring up here, which shows you the ability to change what color properties are assigned to that object. Or you can create a state table, which is what we are going to do. The state table has every possible property and includes the color, as you can see here, fill color, border color, and other colors. So a state table is a little bit more powerful, but if you just want to animate color and do it quickly, the color table will be able to work. I want to change this. This is going to be my running and stopped indicator. So I'm going to have two states. I want to change the text. I am going to change the font color, and I'm going to change the font size. Click OK. So now I have several things in which you can change. If you would like, you can change them each individually here and scroll through each of the options. What I would suggest, though, is you move to this top right corner and you open the table editor. It brings it out and makes it to a display in which you can resize, and it makes it a little bit easier to see and manipulate. So since this is going to be my running and stopped indication, we're going to be red when stopped, and let's do green for running. So when we're stopped, we'll leave it at the default size. When we're running, I really want someone to notice it. So I'm going to make that font size bigger. My text is going to be stopped and running. All you have to do is just select on it, click close. And then if you'd like, you can verify, but everything has been changed inside our state table. The next thing we're going to do again is I'm going to actually make a full expression. So I'm going to make a little bit more complicated expression this time. So I have several conditions that I want to verify to make sure that this stays properly. So I have my start command. So if my start command again is not equal to 0, or, so you cannot type the word or. Again, if you want references, you can go back and use that other object, but the or is 2 pipes. So I want to say if the start command is on, or I have a motor run timer. And if it is timing, I also want my statement. Just to make sure that we don't end up causing a conflict, I'm going to go ahead and put parentheses around this. This will make sure that this first portion is done in comparison and then the or statement, just to make sure that I don't have an odd anomaly when it goes to run. Click OK. All right. So as you can see, I just kind of drag and dropped all the different objects. But I'm going to start moving these around and actually trying to line them up. So I want this to actually line up in the center of this. I want this object to line up to the center of both my text, let's see, and my button. And again, we can bring this over here. We're going to line that with the top. And then if you ever wanted to make something like a faceplate or something like that, you can change that right here. So now you can move it around very similar to a grouped object. You could change the animation, do a couple different things with this where you can make it visible, not visible, enabled, not enabled, based on security, different things like that. But it gives you a nice good feature like that. And then I'm just going to bring our view PDF over here to this guy. At this point, we've gone through and I have animated our two predefined objects, which are the illuminated push buttons. I created a bar graph, which is going to simulate a level that we're using. I have a numerical input, which works as a numerical display as well as the numerical input. And I created a multi-state indicator. And then I grouped them as if it's a small faceplate, even though I didn't make a full faceplate at this point. Then I made a generic push button, which I'm going to use as the navigation push button. The last thing I want to cover really quickly is we're going to navigate to this PDF, and I want to highlight how the PDF document viewer works. So if we double click on our object, if you go to System, there's actually two locations you can go, but you can go to System and you see Displays PDF document. You can drag and drop that over. What it's going to do is it's going to open up and look and show you all the different documents you have assigned to the project, which is also shown in your assets. So right now we don't have any documents. You can add it by adding this, or you can add it by going to this folder. We're going to browse using this on my desktop, and I have a lab manual I just want to show. And then you select OK. So using this function allows you to embed a PDF. If you want to scroll on the PDF, you would be able to swipe in the up direction like that when you emulate or when it's running on the screen. You can also dictate which page number you would like to start, or you can bind that to a tag. So if the person uses a navigation, you can say navigate to a specific screen. You can force it to do that. The other object I wanted to show is a built-in add-on PDF viewer that's built in. The PDF viewer is a little bit bigger, but it gives you more functionality if you wanted to zoom in and out, change the size, and navigate by page, or type in a page. So this is a little bit more adaptable. Where you would change the document is you come here, and it's asking for a document name. Once you hit the down arrow, it will list every document that you have in this folder. We're going to add that one, and there's our documented again. I think we're slightly off the page, so we're going to adjust it, and I seen my little green bar on the left-hand side, so now that I know that I'm fully on the page. At this point, we're going to save our project. So now that we saved our project, we had everything going, the first we can do is we want to verify it. Verifying it will just let us know that we don't have any errors and any warnings, which means you have non-affiliated tags or an improper tag type, things of that nature will all show up in that. But what we're going to do is we want to emulate. And again, like I said, the emulating project or the emulating software for this is a very good tool. You can use it here, or you can go to Project, Emulate Project. It's a simple, just one touch. Once you do it, it will actually build the full terminal, and the software is smart enough that it will create what they call a skin, or the physical outside of the device. So since I configured a 5510, this is the actual menu button that will come on my hardware. If you have a 5310, this will not be there because it only comes in the 5510, but that same button exists here. I just wanted to show you, if you select it, here are your screens. This menu is everything that you assign here in your navigation menu in the Project Explorer. This is how, if you want to add or modify or change what they can get to by a default banner, you can get to this. I quickly also just want to show that I have some live values going on. So there you can see my analog values changing. And let's see why I'm not getting my, let's verify to make sure I got this set up correctly. So we are going to ungroup. Just want to make sure that my light on But my illumination should turn on.
Right on.
When the tag is not equal to 0. Ah. Silly. When it's not running.
Okay.
Not
Restart. I guess restart, huh?
Yeah. So let's go ahead and save that. We can close this. And we're going to hit emulate project. Oh. So if you close the emulator and start it back up again, I did want to point this out. It does take a second to close, but it's not normally too long. Wait for our emulator to come back up again. There we go. Now I got my start push button ready to go. Oh, I got something wrong with my code, but at least you can see the animation on how this actually illuminates and changes. And I showed you how your bar graph moved. The other thing I didn't get to yet is we're going to navigate to our PDF. So as you can see, I can select and scroll using this, or you can use the individuals. And if you want to shrink it down so you can see the whole page, typically you're going to want to have it in here. But I just wanted to highlight that you have the emulator does a great job of copying everything that you could physically do on the panel view. There were some limitations previously with Machine Edition as far as some of the functionality, passing tags and things along that nature that should be corrected at this point. So now that we emulated it, we feel like it's working for the most part. The next thing that we always want to do is you're going to actually download to the hardware. So what you could do to download is you could either select the download button here, or you can go to Communications, Download. So this path here is the same path that you created initially with the project. If you want to change it for some reason, you can change it here, but typically you should set that up when you configure the project for the first time. You can hit next. This will show you all your references to make sure that, yes, I have the right thing. This is the program that should be in the controller. This is the controller location and how I'm addressing it. And the last screen is just simply download. When you download, it takes a couple of minutes. One thing I really want to highlight is if you do not have the right software version of the program being created here in comparison to the firmware on the panel, it will stop right at building runtime and give you an error stating the two different firmware revisions and tell you you must make your software match this other firmware. As you can see, it downloaded and finished. It's stored into our panel view. Very simple process, very similar to the emulation where it's just a few clicks. But I just wanted to highlight how to do it and also make sure everybody understands that you must have the same firmware. The other thing you can do is if you do not have your initial source code, but you want to upload from a panel view, what you can do is you have two options. You can open a project and create a new one, and then come here and select upload. As you notice, there is no button on the toolbar for upload, so you have to go to communications and upload. This will select this, or you can hit your ellipses to force it to browse. Most of the time, though, you are not going to create the application, and you are just going to go to the splash screen of Studio 5000. Once you open the Studio 5000, you have the ability to make a new project from upload. When you go to upload, it will load up FactoryTalk links by default. If you use FactoryTalk links and you attempt to upload from a panel view, at this point, FactoryTalk links is not capable of doing an upload, even though it can do a download. You can tell right here it says, please browse using RS Links Classic to upload. Future revisions of factory talk links will fix that, but for now you must change it to RS Links Classic. Then you can go select the device you want, and as long as it recognizes the device, which mine is not, it will allow you to upload. If it doesn't recognize the device, you can go to Factory Talk Links, and we need to upload EDS file. Most of the time, that is what our problem is going to be if you haven't connected to one already. I just wanted to show that error, and it very quickly will upload the device and then come into our tree again. Now that it can see it, we can close it here, and you can see it automatically populated here. Again, it shows you the version of the firmware on that panel view right here. If you know you do not have that firmware installed, it will error out and not allow you to upload. But I'm going to click upload and show you what the procedure is and how to get that to work. What it'll do is it actually opens up the program and automatically selects communications and upload. It will keep the path in which you selected already. You can select upload. You can upload, and it will automatically create the name of whatever the file is stored inside the panel view. Since I already have it, I'm not going to save it. But what I do want to highlight is when it does do this, it will automatically bring in your security screens, everything. So from an upload, it will automatically bring everything with it. And allow you to start working and modifying the project after that. So I'm going to move on real quickly just to cover our last section, which is just additional online training and support. So if this video left a couple of open holes, which it did because we just don't have enough time to cover everything for you, Rockwell also offers several introductory and lab videos on their YouTube site. You can use the link I listed below to go to the YouTube, or you can search just Rockwell Automation and find several YouTube videos for View Designer.